Alex, and this is our podcast about inequality.
So what are y'all's thoughts on inequality?
I believe that inequality can be found anywhere. It's something that a lot of people deal with, and I feel like we should try our best to stop it.
I think that inequality is a big problem, not only because of its abundance, like everywhere, but because of the different types of inequalities there are, like economic inequalities, social inequalities, and political inequalities.
Inequalities are everywhere, really, and especially I think in environments where there are like a lot of people from different backgrounds. So like in America, I feel like there's a lot more, since it's like a mix of all different kinds of culture, and some people aren't very fond of others.
I agree with that, and I think that inequalities can lead to a lot of different people feeling left out and stuff because of their different backgrounds, like you said.
Okay, are you guys ready to head to the interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Who am I here with?
Aaron.
What's your opinion on social inequalities like racism, sexism, and ageism?
I mean, to be honest, they're useless, bro, because, I mean, we're all humans. We all are basically the same. I don't get why people, are racist to each other or something. Why they're, sexism, too. I don't get it. We all are humans. We aren't a different creature or nothing, bro. That's dumb.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'm here with Tina. Okay, Tina, what are your thoughts on inequality?
It's stupid because what is the point in? I mean, we're all human at the end of the day. What's the point? The only thing that's different is our autonomy and how we look. So what's the point in? Yeah. What's the point in that?
Okay, thank you. What are your thoughts on inequality?
So inequality, I don't think it's right. I think that no one deserves to be treated differently by what they look like or their personal beliefs. I think that honestly it should be made like a law or something, that everyone should be treated the same. So those are just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So
We're back.
what do y'all think are some ways inequality can be present within our generation?
I feel like sexism is definitely still a big one because just because I'm a girl, people are going to assume that I can't do all the things that a man can do. I won't be able to play sports as well or I won't be as smart, and that's really not fair.
Yeah.
Another big one that I think is racism, especially in this school, because I feel like a lot of people are very mean to each other just because they're different races, or they'll assume certain things about other people because they look a certain way, and I don't think that's right.
Right. I think that, like you said, in the school there is a lot of racist things because people are thinking it's funny and thinking it's okay to say offensive things when it's not, and people could actually get hurt even if they're not showing that they're hurt when people say those words.
I also think that something that's very present in our generation is how common certain types of inequalities have presented themselves. For example, in a joking matter, you can say something sexist or racist towards a person and it be considered a quote-unquote joke, but it's really not up to your criteria to take how a person can take what you said.
Especially since, what's it called? A lot of friends can joke about it, but some people assume just because you can joke about it with your friends, you can joke about it with anyone, and when not everyone takes it that way,
And it's not even just our generation too, it's older generations before us, and especially baby boomers, they went through a lot of things, yeah. And that caused them to have a lot of racist thoughts and just things that they had to go through.
And going back to what Diego just said, I feel like many people say these jokes because of the way they were raised and the people they were surrounded by.
These jokes can tie into things like stereotypes, like for example that all
All Mexicans are illegal.
All Mexicans are illegal. that Asians can't drive, and just things that are normalized that can be taken like out of form to where they should be.
Not to mention that it also has a bigger effect on like everyone, the community, the world, because jokes can be taken into stereotypes can be taken to court, and there's just a whole bunch of hate crimes just because of that.
I think that like what Diego was saying about like people thinking it's jokes, a lot of people like when they get like criticized and they're like, oh yeah, what you're doing is wrong, they just laugh it off as, oh, it's my humor, or hey, it's just because I have a dark sense of humor, or whatever. But it's not. It's just like racist, or like just like demonstrating stereotypes.
Oh yeah, I feel like nowadays it has become really commonplace to say something like really out of left field, and then people will take it as a joke, and we don't take it as seriously anymore. And like that's just kind of sad that this is still a really big problem, but it isn't taken seriously at all.
Not to mention it hasn't gone away, like even over several generations, and I think it'll pass on to the next one because we're already seeing effects of like racist jokes, sexism on younger kids because of certain people in the media and stuff. So.
And then another type of inequality that has also made itself present, especially nowadays, is ageism. Because, like, for example, us, since we're younger, we don't get treated the same as, like, older people do in terms of their definition of respect. Like, for example, they'll ask you to do something for them because they're older, but they won't do the same thing for you.
Yeah, and another thing with that is it also affects how we can get jobs, because people aren't going to hire our generation because we don't have as much experience, and then we also don't get treated with as much respect, like Diego said.
Yeah, I think that that's like a really like important thing where like when getting jobs or things, because a lot of like employers, especially like older generations, like have like very strong stereotypes on like younger nurses, like saying that they're lazy or they don't want to do certain things, when it's just not true, and it depends like person to person.
And then they blame us for stuff, like for not being educated and stuff, even though they're the generation that's teaching us, they're the ones that's raising us, and if anything, they're the ones at fault because they haven't taught us what we need to like succeed in life and be like they want us to be.
Yeah, and then another thing, they get mad at us for not having much experience, but like we do have experience, it's just different, because they're like, oh no, you wouldn't know this, like I lived through it, yada yada yada. But we have access, like we are in a different generation, we have access to different things than they did. We have access to the internet, so we know more stuff, and we're like more open and are influenced by more things at a younger age because we have access to all this stuff.
And speaking in experience, I feel like you could ask anybody anywhere what experience they have with inequality or ageism or any of that, and they will be able to tell you a story because it's just that common.
About what Melody said about the internet access and stuff, they often undermine us and stuff because of let's say that we've lived through more stuff. We've lived through more stuff, and they act as if we didn't go through stuff too. Like the pandemic, just because certain people have gone through tough things in the past doesn't mean that stuff that has affected us is any less than
like
what
a lot of
affected
people
them.
went through stress, and a lot of people developed mental illnesses from like serious stuff, and it's not necessarily taken into consideration because they think that just because we're young we're gonna have problems and it's gonna have outcomes. In reality, that's not how it is. We still have serious problems like older people do, but just because they don't understand the way that we portray them doesn't mean that we don't experience them.
I think that like also like a big thing is like if you say like we don't have experience, like help us gain experience on certain things. Like you can't be telling us, oh, you don't have experience, but then don't want to hire us so we gain experience, because you can't like expect us to just like learn something like out of the blue.
Another thing about jobs is youth in the workforce is often like, even if let's say they're like 20, that's still pretty young. A lot of people in professional fields, let's say professional cooks or doctors, firefighters, anything like that, some people may not take them as seriously just because they seem younger. It could also mean that they just worked hard to get into the position they went into, and not just because, you live through more doesn't mean that they don't know just as much as you do.
And then also the wages for people under 18 or less, because there's like more taxes and stuff that has to be deducted from people that are under the age of 18 in comparison to people over the age of 18, because like you can't get like a full check or whatever without like your parents having to interfere with it. So that's one part of discrimination in the workforce.
Something in school could be so some teachers expect you to give them all the respect in the world. So you have to do this, you have to do that, and
Mr.
more.
Castro.
And I believe that respect goes both ways. So if you, obviously, because you're an authority figure, I'll give you respect, but keep in mind that that same respect that I give to someone who respects me isn't going to be the same amount that I give to someone who doesn't respect me. So you can't expect me to respect you if you don't respect me.
Yeah, with respect, I will give you my respect at first because you're an authority figure. I will give you my respect, but you have to work to keep my respect because for example, Mr. Castro. If you do Mr. Castro and you have favorites, then I'm not gonna keep my respect for you like I will for somebody that respects me back.
Yes, it's very complicated with teachers because some teachers they really expect you to be at top of everything and respect you 24/7, and maybe if you're having a bad day or you accidentally disrespect them or something, they stop respecting you throughout, or they even just don't respect you in the first place, which is not okay, because even just because you're younger than them and they're an authority figure doesn't mean that they shouldn't respect us.
And moving on with topics, have you ever been asked the question, do you want uniforms in your school or not?
Yeah, all the time. We got asked that as a prompt in 6th grade, I think.
And I feel both answers are correct, because with uniforms, you can't really tell how well off someone is. Because, for example, if you don't have uniforms at your school, somebody could wear the same thing twice in a week, and then people will start judging them, thinking, oh, you're broke. You don't have any other outfits. And they might get bullied. But with uniforms, everyone's pretty much wearing the same thing. You can't really get judged as much.
I feel like that ties off with economic inequalities, because certain people get treated differently because of their income or certain aspects of their life, necessarily that sometimes they can't control. But economic inequalities aren't just that. They're also economic opportunity inequalities, like we were talking about the workforce. It can be a person can't get a job because they haven't met certain criteria, or if, for example, if a person is more likely to get a job because they're a man rather than a woman, or because they're white rather than being black, that would be considered an economic inequality.
I think the uniform thing also ties in with classism, because some people may make fun of people who are in a lower class just because they're in upper class and they have better clothes than them. So let's say they didn't have a uniform. People who are in a higher class than the lower class people may belittle the other kids just because, let's say, like he said, they wear the same thing twice in a week, which doesn't mean anything about a person.
That it can, because of how you dress or something, it could lead to not having good opportunities too. Because, for example, some homeless, just because they don't have a place to live, or they don't shower, even if they have if something happened in their life that caused them to be homeless, even though they had like good education or something, they still can't be hired just because of other stuff, and that's like not fair.
Yeah, and then I also feel like classism is also, it's like really shallow because you're judging somebody by the way they dress, but the way they dress doesn't exactly reflect the lifestyle that they have. Like, for example, you could see somebody out on the street wearing some like worn down jeans and like a baggy t-shirt, and you're gonna automatically think, oh, that person is poor, and then you probably, if you ever interact with that person, you're gonna treat them less because of it. But then in fact they might be rich and they just like prefer to like dress down and like more comfortable than like constantly showing off.
I think a person's lifestyle doesn't necessarily have to tie with their like economic background, because like for example, Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook, Meta, Instagram, and just everything, he just wears sweatpants and white t-shirts, and he drives an old Honda Fit, even though he's like a multi-billionaire, and that just ties in with his lifestyle doesn't necessarily associate with his economic background.
I think that's also like very showing of like stereotypes, because that could be a stereotype. Just like, oh, because she has money, she's gonna dress that way, or others.
Yeah.
We also talk about stereotypes in our magazine, so if you want to learn more about that, you can go read our magazine.
A very common place where you could see stereotypes, obviously it's not as common anymore, but newspapers used to have a ton of stereotypes in them, where they would have tiny comics depicting certain people, like Mexicans, to be like always eating with a house full of people, and you know, it was full of stereotypes. It's just there's certain times where it still shows in modern day media, like the comics are uploaded online, and that doesn't really change. A lot of them still have a lot of stereotypes in them.
And then like also a popular like TV show that portrays different stereotypes is like Family Guy, which their stereotypes have been comedicized, like turned into comedy, but like if you take it in context, it's like messed up because of the jokes that they make and everything, and it's been normalized like as humor.
Alright. So in the past there were a lot more shows or animated films that show a lot more stereotypes, like really bad ones, like some of them showing Native Americans being huge and very violent, screaming at bears and things. But nowadays there is still some shows, just as Diego said, like Family Guy, that showed a little bit of bad stereotypes, and I feel like it's gotten a little bit better because there's less shows that show those, but there is still some.
Another common type of inequality could be ableism, where certain people are like have unfair treatment to those who have disabilities. I think that's not really shown in media, but I think it's very often to see in like real life, like in school or in just society in general.
You also see it a lot in social media, like for example, if a person with a disability like post a video of themselves on social media, all the comments will be talking about their disability rather than talking about what they were showing in the video.
I want to tie back to what Aura said. I think that it's like, because of how media presents people, it's what makes a lot of people think, like, have stereotypes on people, and like, and show, like, try to make people like just like be sexist, and it's just because of what media presents to them. And talking about what Diego said on the ableism stuff, it does happen a lot of in like social media, where just like a person would be like doing just like whatever, but they're talking about like their disability, and a lot of the comments would be mean, and like you see them a lot in like Instagram Reels now, like just because of somebody's doing anything, and like one person may not agree with it, like the comments are full of like hate and like sexism and racism.
Okay. Another example of ableism is people that look more attractive are gonna get like more attention, and they're gonna get away with more stuff, because if somebody came up to you on the street and they were attractive and they like asked for directions, you would be nice with them. And if somebody came up and like you saw that there was something wrong with them, you're but you're subconsciously not gonna be as nice towards them because they're not as visually appealing to them.
Another type of inequality is political inequality, in which certain people are more likely to get elected into a certain office because of what they stand for, not necessarily in what they think, but because of the type of person they are. Like, for example, in 2016, when Trump won the presidential election against Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump had never really had any sort of political background. He was more of a social figure, and Hillary had been in politics before.
Another thing about the attractive and unattractive thing that Melody said, I think the real name of that is the golden halo or something, where you think just because someone looks a certain way, like let's say you find them more attractive, even if you don't mean to, like you'll be nicer to them just because you see them and you'll think, oh, they're a good person, which that could definitely not be the case. And then there's some people who are less attractive and they portray them as bad people just because they don't fit to the standard, when it could be like they could be the best person in the world. You never know.
Oh, that's another thing that's happening. Just as she said, many people are being discriminated based off of their look. And it's very common on social media, as you can go on anywhere. You can just scroll, and most of the people that you will see are quote-unquote attractive because they get more likes and more views because of their attractiveness.
I also think like that ties a lot in like workplace inequality, because for example, like in movies and like just like actors in general, like even if you're not that good of an actor, like you can still get hired just because of how your looks. Well, like an amazing actor who has worked for a long time or is like just really good, it won't get hired or has like worse roles.
Yeah, so another thing about the golden halo in the workplace, if you get a job, like acting is good, you could be the worst actor, like Andrea said, and you would still get hired for a lot of roles, and then people would watch the movie because, oh my god, there's such a good looking actor in that movie, let's go watch it. And then that's not really fair to those that are really experienced in their career of acting, because then they don't get the attention that they deserve because they don't look as good as somebody that had plastic surgery.
And then another part of inequalities that ties into social inequalities is religious inequalities. Like, for example, if you get picked on for being Muslim or for being a Jew, you might not necessarily take that how people intend it to, and it may affect you more seriously, because there have been some really negative things towards certain religious groups which aren't really taken into account every day. Like, for example, there's been shootings at mosques, there's been shootings at churches and everything, and it's not necessarily portrayed in the media, and it's not talked about as much as it is like for schools and for things, for other types of
certain types of let's say certain wars were caused because of religions. And I think Red can speak about a certain war where there was a lot of the focal point was because of the religion.
Just like you said, I can. The Israeli and Palestinian and Gaza war didn't mainly happen because of religion, but one of the reasons was because of religion. There's a lot of genocide happening over there because of inequalities, and that shows how far these inequalities can really go. And another example is World War II, where there were so many murders of Jews by Adolf Hitler. It shows how far these can really go and how bad it can really be.
And then there's also been like territorial wars over lands from religious texts. Like, for example, the Palestinian-Israeli war started because of a land dispute over agreements that had happened since like the biblical area, like thousands of years ago, when in modern times it keeps going because of those religious inequalities.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that coin, however, people are most likely going to treat other people that have similar religions to them better. Because, like, say, for example, if there's two Jews are more likely going to be nicer, or, like, two Christians are going to be nicer to each other than, let's say, people that have two different views on, like, religion.
Another topic that that inequalities like have in them is physical inequalities, like people who are bigger and smaller than certain others, and they get made fun of, or taller and shorter. It goes, every way.
I think this like causes like a lot of insecurities because like people think just because like that like society normalizes like that you need to be like good skinny or fit, like the beauty standard, like you have to look that way. And it also ties into
into like another type of like in women's it's skinny or fat. You're supposed to be skinny according to certain medias, but I think that in men's bodies, I feel like most men think that they have to be buff, and if you're skinny or if you're too fat, it seems as if like, oh, you're not attractive. And that's not right to anyone, especially even to buff people, because some buff people get some people are jealous of buff people and they treat them unfairly just because of that. It's unfair to everyone, and it needs to stop.
I want to use my elementary school life as an example. I was a very skinny kid, and I was made fun of a lot. They would call me a stick, a pencil, and I would get pushed around very often. I took it because I didn't really know what to do. I was still pretty much new to America, and I didn't know a lot. But now I know more, and I know how I can fix that quote-unquote insecurity. I can work out, I can bulk, which I'm doing right now. And I feel like many people have also gone through this, and they might feel better about themselves, but they'll still remember the pain and the humiliation they went through.
And another really big part is that it affects one's self-image, and that is also very harmful. And so all these social pressures of, you have to look a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to talk a certain way, listen to certain music, hang out with certain people, it is really harmful, especially to the little kids, and it's being like impressed upon them, and that isn't healthy at all for anyone.
I think like what you're saying about how it influences little kids is like
Ha,
a big thing because just because
Sorry. Continue.
because a lot of like inequalities that are like displayed in like media and stuff can get like into the kids and minds and like they start like continuing generations of inequality. For example, you've seen it a lot in like video games and stuff where like little kids are saying like stuff that they don't even know what it means and they don't know how like it's offensive.
Like, since their brain is still developing and with those negative influences in their life, they'll not be able to like get over those things that they said as kids, and they'll keep going whenever they get older. Like, if a kid is taught that racism is good by his parents, he'll probably keep that going and, like, just continue with that in his life rather than stopping and learning from his parents.
Ha ha ha. About the video game thing, I think a lot of insults are thrown around on the internet, and that includes like race, sex, and like in certain games, like let's say Call of Duty. I feel like a lot of the time, like even if a girl is good at the game, they'll constantly belittle her just because she's a woman, and they'll be like, "Oh, get back into the kitchen," like always using insults. Just because of their gender. Like, for example, there was a streamer. Her name was Nadia. She still plays Call of Duty, but she used to get made fun of a lot because she was a woman. But she proved herself right whenever she kept on beating men in competitions and tournaments and stuff, and she just kept going with it.
I feel like another big part of it is people just like throw out insults like they're nothing, but you never know who is on the other end, because it could be like a really professional girl, or it could be like a little 7-year-old kid that doesn't know any better, and then he's like his whole like family line is getting insulted. And so people should really be more careful with things that they say online, because you never know who's on the other end of who's on the receiving end of what you're saying.
You also never know how people can say stuff. Like, for example, if you say something that you think isn't going to hurt someone, but it ends up hurting them, you don't necessarily know exactly the damage that you did to that person with those words that you said or that action that you did against them because of an inequality that you made against them.
And I do this sometimes, and when someone makes a funny joke of me, I laugh it off because sometimes it is funny, but in my head, I think about it for weeks and weeks.
Okay, another way that you can be discriminated against is where you came from and, like, where your parents came from. So, like, for example, my mom came from Mexico and my dad's American, and people are always telling me to go back to my country, but I was literally born here. Like, what are you talking about?
Okay.
People give me rude names like jollof rice. What is this? What's the one that I forgot what it's. Oh yeah, they say because of this one reel or one video that was going around where someone would ask someone from a tribe their name and they would go, "My name is Uwetwe," and people thought it was funny, which it was, but it got very repetitive when they started saying it to me. And they would also say, do you like, what's the name of that one food?
I don't know.
Fufu, yeah. They would ask me, "Oh, do you eat fufu every day? Do you like fufu?" When I really don't. I like something else it's similar, but it's not the same thing.
I think that can also, the tribe thing, that can also harm the tribe because, like, that gives them the bad stigma. Oh, it's so funny that they talk like that when it's just another language at the end of the day. Yeah, it can be funny sometimes, but, like, when you overuse it and you make it, like, a regularized thing, you know, it can, at some point, go back to that. And if anyone visits there, they might make fun of them or do even worse stuff.
Yeah. I I think that like social media is like influencing a lot of like new stereotypes on people, because maybe just because something is funny, like they associate whatever the video was about with the kind of group or like people, and then it creates like a whole new stereotype and brings it to back to inequality.
Of course.
And then also people get like judged for the language that they speak, which is something very confusing to me because everyone speaks a unique language. Like for example, people that speak Mandarin, people make fun of the Mandarin language by saying phrases like ching chong and stuff like that, when it really doesn't tie to the language. It doesn't have any, it's not a real word in that language, or it's just a misinterpretation of the language.
Another thing about the language, I think a lot of people, just because they have certain classes where they don't like teachers, they'll keep that person, like the dislike that they have for that person, and they'll add it to the language where it has nothing to do with it. Like there's certain students at this school, because they don't like the Chinese teacher or they don't like the Spanish teacher, they're like, oh, I hate Chinese people, oh, I hate people who speak Spanish. Like that's not right. Just because they speak it doesn't mean that everyone's like that. And even then, you shouldn't be like making fun of them or their language.
I think like on the subject of like Chinese teachers and Spanish teachers, I think like it happens a lot where just because they speak a different language, or they might not understand, like for example here, like they might not understand like English completely, they think that it's okay to like make fun of them behind their back or like say bad things in class just because they don't speak the language, or because they teachers like that, they think, oh, I'm not going to do anything in their class, they're not going to care and stuff.
And another thing that happens, I noticed this a lot, is whenever a teacher doesn't know a language, like, for example, Mr. Turner doesn't know Spanish, some kids will speak bad about him in Spanish behind his back, saying stuff like, I'm not going to say it because it's bad, but they would say stuff that is very rude, and I feel like we should stop doing that. And people should not do that, because even though they don't speak that language, it still might hurt them if they can translate it.
Also, people just in general get judged too much for certain things that they do, which can be like cultural beliefs or stuff. Like Jewish people, some of them wear yarmulkes and stuff on their heads, which is like a little hat, which represents how God is always above you and how he's superior to you. But people think that it's just a dumb little hat, and they say stuff about it when in reality it has a significant meaning to it.
Also, certain people, like let's say here, I think, let's say their family really, like, they have to do the thing where they have to pray every, like, how long is it? Like, they have to pray, like, I think 5 times a day, right?
Oh, yeah, 5 times.
That's Islam.
Yeah, 5 times a day. And they used to have a thing at this school where they had a room where you could go pray, or you could go to your church and go pray. But because certain kids didn't really believe in it, it's just because their parents believed in that stuff, they would go along with it and they would skip school. Where they're taking advantage of the rights that they're given in their religious beliefs and stuff, when in reality they're just going off and doing whatever they want.
Now that room isn't here anymore because people were taking advantage, like she said, so they just removed it, and you're gonna have to pray in class, I guess.
I think that because of a lot of people doing bad things, it associates the person with the group. For example, religion. If what you guys are talking about, just because they the people before, they didn't really respect what was given to them. Now a lot of people that do care about their religion now don't have that space to be able to practice it.
Also, in my personal case, I've been judged for my own religion, I'm a Roman Catholic, and I've been told that my religion isn't real because of its beliefs or something like that. When in reality, that's not true. It's still a type of Christianity. It was a Christian that told me this. It was a Protestant that told me this. He told me that my religion wasn't real and how it should be considered something else, when in reality it shouldn't, because we believe in the same things.
Okay, so that's gonna be it for our podcast. We are the Equal Six, and we are signing off.
Thank you
Bye.
for watching. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, end it.